So the United States is in a little bit of a lead crisis, especially here in Michigan. Now, Flint, of course, has dominated some of the headlines here, and which it absolutely should, about all the lead in the drinking water. But it's not just in Flint. It turns out that there are many schools in Detroit that have also experienced lead, and not just lead, but also copper in their drinking water. And it's gotten to the point of where it's so bad that the Detroit School District has decided to shut off the water. It turns out that in 16 out of 24 schools that have been recently tested, the results have been disastrous when it comes to both the levels of copper and lead in the water. Now, according to Nikolai Vidi, superintendent of the Detroit Public Schools Community District, he said, although we have no evidence that there are elevated levels of copper or lead in our other schools where we're awaiting test results, out of an abundance of caution and concern for the safety of our students and employees, I'm turning off all drinking water in our schools until a deeper and broader analysis can be conducted to determine the long-term solutions for all schools. Then the move came even after officials from the city and the Great Lakes Water Authority sought to assure residents that water provided by the authority was safe to drink, pointing to the district's infrastructure as the problem. Now, here's what's interesting, right? So here we have an entire school system in one of the biggest cities in our state, possibly the biggest city in the state, Detroit, shutting off the water because of lead and copper. Water's contaminated. The water's contaminated. And here we have a state that has given a lot of money to rich people and corporations. We've been under Republican governance here in Michigan, Rick Snyder, for quite some time. So Rick Snyder and Republicans have been funneling all the state money towards the rich, giving them gigantic tax cuts and doing more deregulation. They have not been fixing our infrastructure. And so that's one of the reasons why it's so disastrous. And on a federal level, it gets even worse. Again, we have infrastructure problems all over the country. Michigan, Flint is not the only place where lead has been found in the water. It's been happening all over. Not just lead, but also there have been contamination by PFAS, right? PFAS, right? So they found that in the water. That's been a problem in cities and even on military bases. So we have huge contamination issues. But what are we doing with the money? We're giving tax cuts to the rich people, to corporations, in which 83% go to the rich. That the benefits of that money. Those corporations are using it to buy back their own stock and inflate their own value, creating another problem, an economic bubble in Wall Street. They're not using that money to fix infrastructure, and as a result, children are unable to trust the water at their schools, and they're unable to drink the water at the schools because they have to shut it off. This is a disastrous situation. Now, let me get to more details here. Now, Dr. Vidi did say that he has no evidence that all children, or at all that children have been impacted from a health standpoint. Nonetheless, they can't drink the water at school. So, again, big problem. Now, Vidi said, I'm not playing around with this. It's a safety issue. Now, the district's building problems, they say, according to the Detroit Free Press, have been a constant source of frustration for Vidi. Earlier this summer, he released details from a facilities review that found the district would need to spend $500 million now to fix the poor conditions in its schools. That price tag will rise to $1.4 billion in 5 years if the district did nothing. And unfortunately, that's exactly what we're doing. We're doing nothing. In May, Vidi said the district didn't make the right investments in facilities while it was under control of the state-appointed emergency manager from 2009 to 2016, because that emergency manager was not going to fix that. The emergency manager, their only job, other than usurping democracy, was to cut the budget. Not to help the schools, not to make sure there's clean water, not to make good investments, but basically to cut any what they considered excess waste from the budget. That would mean making sure to them that schools have good drinking water, that residents have good drinking water. Not a concern for us. All our concern is, how do we cut the budget so that Lansing can funnel more money to rich people? That's what this is about. And in fact, Vitti said back then, it's sending the message to students. I think this is a quote from back in 2017. Parents and employees that we really don't care about public education in Detroit, that we allow for second-class citizenry in Detroit, and that hurts my heart, and it angers me, and it frustrates me that I can't fix it now. So this guy actually does care. In fact, he took immediate action to turn off that water as soon as the results showed that there was lead and copper in the water. I don't want the students drinking that. Well, I actually care about these students, unlike people in Washington, unlike people in Lansing. We actually care about these kids. And look, you can easily bring race into this because, look, Detroit is majority black. Flint, majority black, right? So is there any other explanation that you need to explain why this is happening? Why this continues to happen? It happens in poorer areas. It happens in areas that are majority minority. It's because they don't care. You think this would happen in a wealthier district? No, of course not. It only happens, strangely enough, when there's a lot of minorities and there's a lot of poor people. Amazing how that works. So this is what we've got going on, okay? We have people that are not having good and safe drinking water or drinking water at all. In fact, they have, look, they're dealing with bad infrastructure. They're dealing with poisoned water. Is there any reason why they should be paying the water bill at this point? Really? Is there any reason? Shit, is there any reason they should be paying taxes? Because what's their tax money going for? Their tax money is not going for their own schools. It's supposed to be that they pay money, that they pay their water bills, and they pay their taxes so that money can be reinvested in the community. That's not what's happening. It's going to the corporations. It's going to the rich. Is there any reason why you should be paying taxes at this point if you're living in one of these areas? Now, of course, I want people to pay their taxes, but I want that money to be actually invested in the people. And this is the problem. It's not. It's just not. And so, look, the only thing that I can say that we can do is we can start actually getting involved in the political process and electing people who will represent us. Because right now, Lansing doesn't. Lansing doesn't represent the people in Detroit. The representatives that are in Lansing. They don't. The people in power do not represent regular people. We need to change that. And it's much easier in state elections to go and do that than it is in national elections. So we should focus on that first and change the system, because there is absolutely no reason that in the wealthiest country in the world that we should have schools that are not only falling apart, but no longer have safe drinking water, and entire communities that don't have safe drinking water. What kind of country is this if we don't allow our children to have the basics? Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.